it's got to be very, very difficult for someone who is, say you got a family, trying to support your family, and you are stuck in a job that you're dealing with that all the time, but you can't.
Of it.
Yeah, and you can't really stand up for yourself because if you do, you might get fired, and then your kids don't have food. Like, that's very stressful.
You just hate your job.
Yeah, every day. So I feel for all the people out there who hate their jobs. It's tough.
Thank you, man.
Anyway.
Gargoyle's back.
Dude, we should have named him early on.
We should have. Missed an opportunity there.
He has a little emoji.
Yeah, the eyes over your. Hey fellas, I got a hot topic.
I have something to say.
That should have been one of the sessions that we talked about that we never did. Jordan's throat hot topics. Do you guys have like a certain level hurricane that you will leave?
Yeah, so Zeta, after the aftermath during the storm, I was like, yeah, we probably should for this.
That was the one that like snuck up on us.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It snuck up on everybody.
We're like, oh, it's gonna be a 1.
Yeah,
it was
1.
Basically a week 3.
Yeah, it ended up being a 3.
Wake up, your fences through
3
your
is
wall.
like I'll try to leave.
I agree.
Yeah.
Especially now, I got young kids.
Yep.
It's like, hey,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
At that time, Rayma literally was just born.
Yeah.
I put Amber in the bathroom, and I was like, yeah, it's getting kind of bad. Like, go in the bathroom with Rayma. And she
I'm going to stand outside and have a smoke.
on my porch.
I'm gonna
porch
sit in my
sitting.
thinking chair. Wrote my journal today. Wind blowed real hard.
How can I profit off of this storm?
Full circle. Back to like the first episode.
I'm investing in lumber right
You need to
now.
invest in more Waffle House. I know they never close.
They're gonna be the first one over.
Look, I did put out a meme immediately, like roofers after Zeta.
Oh, yeah.
It was like immediately. I think I put it out that night.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
It was the guy in the behind the tree.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
They write their license number on a business card.
Absolutely.
They just fabricate one.
Well, it was funny. We went to my parents' house. We are like, oh, it's gonna blow through for like a couple hours, So we went to my parents' house. We were hanging out there. They had dinner or whatever. And it's just like, hey, we'll go home around 9 o'clock, whatever. And all of a sudden, it was about 7:30, whatever, 8 o'clock. I don't know. And all of a sudden, it was like.
Dad, can we stay here?
Yeah. And dude, me and my dad like caught eyes one time. I was like, because we stayed for George way back in the day.
Yeah.
And so like that was really the only hurricane that was the only hurricane we stayed for.
Yeah.
Because it's typically like a tropical storm or like a 3. That's kind of So this one was like but I remember the sound of George, and that was a strong. I think it was a 2, maybe a 3. George, I can't remember. I have to look that up.
But it was a 3. That was our family's first hurricane. We moved here from California literally 6 months later.
Really?
Nice. Zeta was my first one.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah, very nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Good time.
Katrina was mine.
Was it really?
Yeah, we stayed. My dad had to with work. He was.
Y'all stayed at the
you guys
house.
were at the, because
No,
he worked
we
at the VA.
stayed. We stayed at the VA on the back bay.
Oh.
So that's where we stayed for George. And then we stayed for Katrina because of the VA. Everyone that works at the VA, they have to stay in the area.
Yep. I never felt in danger. The sounds were amazing. But then we were in Dad's office, and his office kind of had this big window that looked over the back bay. And I remember standing just watching water rise, and it's like, oh my goodness. And then a random boat's just going by. And then once everything stops and you go outside, you realize just how bad this actually was.
Yeah.
So
I was sitting in a hot tub in Georgia during Katrina.
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's like,
Praying.
oh, there goes our home.
Well, and all the news reports, like everything's gone.
Yeah.
Like,
we were
Yeah.
getting phone calls from this one guy,
that's wild.
and he was like, I worked for the city or something like that down here, and so he was like literally boots on the ground, like during the storm, and then right afterwards, and he called my dad, and he was like, the whole coast gone. Gone. He's like, and he started naming like landmarks. Gone. And we were like, oh my God. We came back, and to be honest, he was actually pretty accurate.
it was-
Down south of the tracks,
Dude,
he was completely
wild.
right.
Dude, yeah, because we lived in Long Beach, and then we just went to a hotel on like Highway 49. And what was pretty funny is they, all of a sudden we started it's never a good idea whenever all the news reporters are staying at your hotel.
Yeah, that's not what you're looking for.
Hey, Jim.
What are you doing
There
here?
was actually a newspaper that from Pennsylvania that like took my picture and did like interviewed me for it. You can still find it on Google. Like type Brent Finch, Pennsylvania, Hurricane Katrina.
Did y'all had the Dolphins?
Yeah,
were
yeah,
in the
that's where I
pool.
was gonna go. Yeah, the so
What?
Marine Life
Yeah.
brought all of their
Oh, that's
dolphins
awesome.
to that pool.
Wow.
So they were doing a huge report on
Then
that.
they
It was
washed
really
away.
cool.
Dolphins down Highway 49.
They stayed in the pool the whole time. It's pretty
Isn't that
wild.
nuts?
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the night before Katrina, the Saturday night, I was doing a radio program called Youth for Truth, and I DJ'd on Saturday nights at WAOI 91.7, and I had two buddies. One was there in the studio with me, and his name was Keith, and then another buddy was on the road. He was evacuating in his car going like to Louisiana. And so he was our field reporter. And so we're calling him, getting updates. We had the Weather Channel on the TV in the station, and we were giving completely uninformed weather updates. Dude, we're like
No
so-
sources. No.
Oh,
It was
dude.
Weather Channel. That
We
was
probably
it.
had so many like Christians be like, oh my god.
Oh, dude. Oh, well, I got some stories about WAY. So, I'm like, so the Weather Channel says it's at longitude, and I was saying, so I don't know what it means. So, like, millibars, what does that mean? Keith's like, I'm not really sure. So we're going back and forth, and so I was like, maybe we should give some advice to those people out who are our listeners tonight. Advice, and so I don't know. We need batteries. And make sure you get water. Apparently, that's really helpful in case things get bad. And then Keith was like, and another thing, jumping will do no good. You cannot jump over the hurricane.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. Dude, how amazing if that audio is available somewhere.
It has to be saved on a cassette somewhere
Dude, it's
down
somewhere.
bronze.
I was
Jumping.
crying.
Speaking of hurricane season, it's supposed to be the hottest summer than
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yep.
Hotter than last summer.
Yeah.
If
I
you
don't
remember from last summer. It was like high of 98, low of 97.
It's true.
You walk outside, you're immediately just like,
Yeah,
it was bad last year.
it was.
I've lived here basically my whole life, and last year
terrible.
while it was happening, I was like, "This is not normal, right?"
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, "Double El Nino," blah 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 blah. I'm like,
It
"This
was
is
a little bit drier, but it was so hot.
oh man."
So it's going to be just as hot this year?
Apparently.
They said hotter.
Man,
I don't know
praise
how.
God.
I don't know how.
crazy.
Some
the
of these
Lord.
charter boats. I was talking to a guy who's a charter captain, and then he was talking to his other guys who are like, dude, they're like 70 years old, been here doing that
Yeah.
forever, and he was like, I can't remember a hotter one, and all the other guys are like, this is the hottest summer that we've ever worked, ever done this. Like this is it, and they've been around since like the 60s or whatever, working out there, and they're like, dude, like being out for them. They're chartering a boat out in the middle of the ocean, right? Yep. And it's like, especially those days where there's like no wind and
Yeah.
no clouds.
That's terrible, man.
You're sitting out there exposed under the sun. I was talking to one of them. He was like,
It's like, hey,
dude,
can I cast underneath your captain's area?
just
UV 12.
blazing. Yeah, he's like, dude, and going out twice a day, morning crew and afternoon crew, every day. Dude, that sounds literally like the doorstep of hell.
Yeah,
There's
that's
just nothing you can do when it's that hot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the ACs can't keep up in your house. Like, it's just, it's
Yeah.
miserable. It really is.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for that good news.
Hallelujah.
Praise God.
Anymore. It's an election season. It's the hottest summer in the history of Mississippi.
It's the last episode of this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, this just sucks.
We just had a massive swarm of termites.
oh, we
did.
did.
Dude, that was disgusting.
That termites in my shower. All over the
Yeah,
place.
it was weird.
Yeah.
The end of one season is the beginning of a new season. So it's the end of podcast season, but it's the beginning of hurricane season.
Wow.
That is so good. I mean,
I love it when God really speaks to me about the season I'm in.
Yeah.
She just really
Yes.
I like that you were
Sounds
looking
good.
up like you were seeing God.
I was seeing the season.
The season.
The season.
It's unscripted season 3. last episode,
Yes.
wrapping it up,
Episode
getting ready for
24,
the
right?
summer. I don't know what episode it is.
Number
I think it's
11?
11.
11.
11.
Didn't
But we're
quite
going
make it to
15.
15 this time.
Yeah.
'cause-
Only 4 short.
This is the finale. Not necessarily grand, but it's the finale.
It's a finale.
I like the
Or
honesty
just
in
the
that.
final.
It's like
the
the end
final.
of the season for the
It's
football
not
team
even
that
a
knows they're
finale.
not going to the playoffs. It's like, yeah, we're gonna
Hey,
do
done
our
here.
best.
2 years. We got it. We're rebuilding season.
It's finale without the E. It's just final.
Yeah. yeah.
Final.
Finesse. Fini.
We're gonna answer the one question we got.
Yeah. One question the whole season.
From our moms last week.
No, we did.
Yeah.
The Mother's Day was fun. It was good.
that was
It
a
was
sweet
good.
episode.
Yeah, a lot of comments. 3 comments.
It's like,
Were they good? Bad?
Technically, that is a lot.
That is a
If you
lot.
It was just like amen.
it's so good.
Love this episode, boys.
That's
Some
funny.
bot. Click
This
this
is a
link.
plot. Yeah.
Russian bot.
Tragically,
Don't
there
click
were
the-
lives
don't
were
click-
lost.
Don't click the link.
I'm going to miss him so much.
Yeah, and people are like, "What? What? What? How did she died?
What happened?
It's called spam, people. Stop downloading all of the worm programs onto your phones and computers."
Yeah.
Speaking of scams, how about the guy that shot the Uber driver?
You know,
Dude.
I saw that story. I didn't see the
Pretty
scam
rough.
part of it. I just thought the dude just shot a Uber driver, and they said that
Yeah.
she was at the wrong house or something. Is how I first saw the story.
A gentleman, an older gentleman, he was like in his
81.
80s. Yeah, 80s.
Yeah.
So he just a kind of a loner guy in the house. He started getting a whole bunch of calls saying that they kidnapped somebody.
His nephew
nephew.
was kidnapped, and the guy
Yeah.
was holding him for ransom for $12,000.
Yep, and he was gonna send somebody
Yeah,
to collect the money.
yeah.
And the scam guy sent an Uber driver to that address, and obviously that gentleman who was 81 years old shot the Uber driver.
Yeah. Didn't know.
That's horrific. That's dude.
Yeah.
It's just pure chaos.
Yeah. You can't shoot somebody like that.
No matter if it's for
Can't
ransom.
do it. Can't do it.
I mean,
man.
you can.
Oh, you can. You may not. You
But
don't
you'll
have
get
permission
15
to do
to
that.
life.
You shan't.
Short. A short.
But it's tough because you think about somebody that you know who's in their 80s. It's like you're so discombobulated, so
yeah.
nervous, and so like angry and fearful and all that kind of stuff. And it's bad. It's bad. It's sad.
Well, if they're holding your nephew, I mean, they're coming to your house. You think they're going to do something to you too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that's a terrible situation.
Yeah.
Moral of the
Yeah.
story: don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been
I
getting
don't
so many spam calls lately. It's ridiculous. Dude, it's really annoying. I subbed to Sun Herald because I wanted to read, because of their stupid paywall. There was an article I really wanted to read. So I was like, I'll pay the $2 for over the next 3 months or whatever it was. Well, I canceled it. I've been bombarded with people being like, hey, why are you canceling? Why are you canceling? They send it off to a agency to force you to get resubbed back in. But it's been ridiculous, dude. So many numbers have been calling me.
Old Sun Herald.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got some stories.
Was the article worth it?
It was a business article, so it was a local business thing. So
Nothing with
but
Sun
was,
Herald
but
was
was
worth
it worth it?
I honestly can't remember. So
I made
probably not.
50,000 off of it.
I worked there when I was 18 years old, and I was just a news assistant, and the guy that I worked for, one day we were talking about online, like the website and all this kind of stuff, and I was telling him, I was like, why don't we put like more into the website? Like, why don't we do more, and he was like, well, I was like, I mean, eventually nobody's going to buy these anyway. Dude, he got so angry. He got so mad at me. He was like, people are always going to want to have the paper in their hand. It's nostalgic, and it's just the way that it's people are. It's never going to be just about the screens and oh, dude, like he was hot, and I got fired like 4 months later, by the way. But anyway, and no, I was like, I haven't read an actual newspaper, and this is 20 years ago. I was like, I haven't read a newspaper in forever. Like, if I want to read something, I go to the website, And of course, nowadays it's a little bit different than it was then. But it was like you go to sunherald.com or you go to, I don't know, something that's online, right? And he was not happy about it.
I
But
wonder if he ever regrets or if he ever remembers that conversation.
I don't know. I
that
drove
could have
by
helped.
Sun Herald the other day, and it's no longer there.
Yeah, they're selling the building.
It's really weird.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know where they're at.
Online.
Remote workers.
Behind that paywall, baby. $2 a pop. Let's go.
Subscriptions that nobody wants to pay for.
Oh yeah, dude, it's ridiculous.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Like, it was not a good situation. Like, that was a part of my life that tilted me a certain direction as far as like cynicism goes. It did not. It was bad
because of the environment, or because of like all the sound offs. You see how negative
it was all
people
of
are.
it. It was. I had my first run in with like office politics there, and I was like, oh, this is how people play the game.
How long did you work there?
10 months.
Long enough.
10 or 11 months, something like that.
That's a bad job.
Yeah, that's
It
wild.
was
That's a
bad.
tough
And then
job.
I got fired, and it was total. It was a setup. They just wanted me out. But then it was just funny. This is my favorite part of the whole story. I get fired. The next day, I get a phone call from him, and I'll keep his name out of it. But anyway, because he still is in the newspaper business, just not on.
Say it and we'll beep it out.
First name. Anyway, he called and he said, "Hey, just wanted to offer you something." He said, "What if for the next couple of weeks, you still work here and train the person who's going to be taking your position?" I said, "Scott, why would you want me to train the person who's going to take my spot if I just got fired?" But I was like, this is wrong. This makes no sense.
Yeah.
This makes no sense. Like, I do my job. You know it. I hit all my deadlines. I answer the phone. I do it all.
frustrating.
And so whenever they did that, I was like, oh, what it is, they just didn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when people kind of talk about office politics and stuff. I was only 18. It didn't matter that much.
Yeah.
But like it's got to be very, very difficult for someone who is, say you got a family, trying to support your family, and you are stuck in a job that you're dealing with that all the time.
A
but
lifetime
you
of
can't,
it. Whew.
Yeah, and you can't really stand
That's
up for
rough,
yourself
man.
because
Yep.
if you do, you might get fired, and then your kids don't have food. Like, that's very
You just
stressful.
hate your job. You
Yeah,
hate
every
your
day,
job.
every day. So I
Jeez.
feel for all the people out there who hate their jobs. It's tough.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that, brother.
Dude, that was brilliant.
That was good.
That was good.
Is this a
good.
safe place to talk about my boss?
Joel quits on the final season, the final
have
I'm in a
Scott
episode.
in my
situation right
life.
now. I'm not going to say his full name. His last name's Dakota.
I don't want it to sound like Pastor Van, though. So his first
Starts
name's
with a
Jordan.
J.
Yeah.
Starts with a J. That's all I'll say.
I've been telling him church is moving only online.
Nobody's going to do that. Everyone's always going to come to the building. It's a sacred space.
You took his prophetic words.
It's like
VR will never be a thing. Nobody's rocking around with
jeez.
an Apple.
Meanwhile, that church has maxed out their virtual reality sanctuary and it's
Saddleback.
tripled their
Saddleback
time.
church, man.
There's little animals worshiping. Like,
Oh, furries, dude, all up in there.
they're hopping around.
dude, if I'm worshiping next to a half rabbit, half crocodile,
Oh, man.
look at what God has done.
Won't he do it? He
Won't he
said,
do
go
it?
forward to all nations.
Highways
all
and the
peoples."
byways and the alleys.
And you're definitely a byway.
Hey, speaking of bi, we're starting a new sex series in June.
Let's go.
And redeeming sexuality. So check this out. Last night, me and Ariana. I was talking to her about some worship team stuff or whatever, and in it, I can't remember what happened, but somehow, some way, something about genders came up. I said the way that she reacted to something. I was like, have you heard people talk about genders and stuff like that? She's like, oh yeah. I'm like, really? Like what? Like what's? She's like, at school, like all the time. I was like, so what are they saying? She's like, oh, like this one kid the other day was talking about how, and the kid wasn't saying that he believed this, but he was just like, oh yeah, there's like something like 72 genders or whatever. I was like, really? I was like, so what do you think about that? She's like, it's so weird. And I said, well, actually, it's not 72. It's over 150 genders. And she
Yeah.
was like,
And counting.
yeah, right. And she was like, what? So, dude, we went in on it. We went in on
Nice.
the whole thing.
Very nice.
And she was tracking along with everything pretty much until I said, have you ever heard of a sex reassignment surgery? And she was like, no. I was like, all right, let me just let you know. And so I told her, I said, whenever somebody say they're a boy and they feel like they're a girl, I said, nowadays it's not just about, affirming, hey, okay, you could be whatever you want to be, which is, in and of itself a whole issue. I said, but then there's people who are literally getting surgeries to remove, their organs, or, I said, like, if there's a girl, so they'll literally remove their breasts and stuff like that. And she was just like total shock, and it's kind of sad in one sense. You see this 12-year-old like completely being exposed to information that's like an ideology that's completely just out there. But I'm like, that's where it's at, babe, and that's the reality of the world we live in. But I was also preparing her. I told her this. I said, well, we're about to do this series, and I said, probably need to kind of let you know about a couple of things, so that way you're not sitting there in the front row completely shocked the whole time. Yeah. But
how did she respond? Like, or was it just, it was information and like but like, what was the resolution of the conversation?
Well, the like I said, the surgery part was like, what in the world?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And I just told her straight up. I said, that's why we believe it's a sinful, demonic ideology, philosophy, way of thinking. And that's what the world does, is it just gets, and I said, but the Bible says that God created male and female. So we talked about biological sex, male and female, and then talked about gender identity, and then we talked about sexual attraction, which, male, female for her is easy to understand, and then sexual attraction is easier for her to understand as far as like, but when you talk about the gender identity and the
different conversation,
the feelings, the mental things.
Yeah, I explained to her about anorexia. So we talked about anorexia, and which she knew about that. And I said, how weird would it be? How wrong would it be if someone has anorexia and they go to the doctor and they say, well, you're right. Whatever you feel, if you feel fat, you're fat. Just continue to not eat.
It's a great parallel.
Makes no sense, right?
Yep.
And so, the way that we believe is that, yes, people legitimately do feel that, but it is not something that we affirm and we continue to promote to the point where we begin to, mutilate our bodies. We would say that they have a condition that needs to be, treated and helped and supported, but not affirmed, because it leads to more things that are negative for them long term.
But yeah, so it's like the age is getting younger and younger, and then, dude, talk about devices, like parents just being like, oh yeah, just watch the YouTube shorts or whatever, and like, dude, the algorithm of like all the people making all these channels, and it's like eventually it just seeds in. It's like
the vast majority of kids, even in Ariana's school, for her age group, they've had phones for years.
Yeah.
And unlocked phones, and I just.
Yeah.
I'm just going to continue to be old school with it. Like, it's absolutely asinine that that kids are given devices that literally connect them to the entire earth, and parents are just allowing that.
Completely ungoverned.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You are starting to see revival of parents like kicking back on some of the ideas. Even some young people in general are starting to kick back on the idea of not having social media.
Well, there's polls out there that are saying exactly what you're saying. That this is, I can't remember what the name of this new generation is. It Alpha? Is that what?
Alpha.
Okay, that this is one that you're going to see the kickback, but you're seeing a decrease in the age range of participants on social media.
Honestly, I think it just changes because, like, even some people would even consider like what Snapchat is as a social media. They would consider it as like a platform where I can just communicate with my friends.
Text.
I'm like,
they think
exactly.
about Snapchat the exact same way as text.
Yeah, but then it's like, hey, there's articles that pop up. So it's like, hey, I do put that in the same kind of category as social media. So like, if you still have that, I would say you are digesting social media. You just are digesting it in your own little ecosystem, and it looks a little bit different.
Just different platforms kept blossoming into. I mean, it was like, okay, it's just Facebook. That is social media. This is what social media is, and then this thing branched off of that. This thing branched off of that, and then you kind of pick the one that you're used to.
What ecosystem?
Yeah. What's kind of interesting, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about a question that we got from one of our subscribers. I said it right for the first time.
You did.
A subscriber.
Oh.
Well done.
Finale. But they asked this question, and it does remind me of what we're talking about. They asked a question about denominations, and it was first, why are there so many denominations? Why aren't we just Facebook? Why aren't we all just Christians? That kind of thing. And then, you know what I mean? But then it was the question of, specifically to our church, Northwood Church, why are we the denomination or the non-denomination that we are? And this is one that we got asked a couple months ago, honestly. So I wanted to throw it out here as far as denominations go. And I think to actually go there, we have to understand maybe where they came from to actually even get into the conversation. So I know you're pretty versed on that conversation, but I think we can all talk a little about denominations. Let's just go there. Where did denominations come from?
I think of denominations like Bible translations. It's like there's a whole tree of going back to where it started, and you get these manuscripts, and then it's like these people took this manuscript and they interpreted it, translated it into this, and then did it, and then all of a sudden another person over here took it, and then you have these versions, and then people translate off these versions, and it just keeps growing, and people have different takes on certain words in the Bible, and so they, you have somebody with a certain potentially, and this is why some people only want the original translations, is they believe that people have different convictions or agendas, and then they translate the Bible a certain way in order to kind of support this agenda, right? And so it's so similar with denominations. You go back and it's like, why can't we all be Christians? Well, I think we all are Christians. We all depends what we're talking about there, but you've got the original church, and it was great, and they were all in one accord, right? But it was a very small amount of people.
It was.
And then it began to grow, and immediately some people think that denominations and like all these different sects of Christianity is like new. It's like, no, within a few years of Jesus ascending, there was like already multiple camps that were already splitting
the Jewish
off.
Christian church and the Jews and the Gentile church.
Yeah, you had
who
that.
Are you going to be with?
Then you had like 4 kind of main categories of the gospel. And, that's why Paul was having to defend all this, because he had some people that were saying there's no resurrection and all this kind of stuff. And so it just immediately started splintering. Then you've got, in about 300 AD, you've got where, the church, Christianity becomes legal again because it was illegal. People were getting persecuted, it becomes legal. And then it starts growing. Then you get the Catholic Church that, essentially is birthed. But in those years, there was the church fathers, man. They were establishing, they were canonizing the Bible, basically saying these are the books that are proven to be reliable. Because people were coming out with fake books from apostles, and a lot of people struggle with those today. And it's like, what about Thomas? What about these? It's like, well, no, that the earliest manuscript was 300 years later and 200 years later or whatever. And I'm not saying that Thomas was exactly that one, but there's examples of books that are like that it didn't make it through manuscript evidence, and it's just not authoritative. When it comes down to it, denominations are around how people interpret Scripture and apply it to the church.
That's a good definition.
Yeah, and how you do that, everybody kind of birds of a feather flock together, and it just keeps dividing. You could look at it that way, or you could look at it as multiplying. Denominations are reach different people a lot of times.
It's true.
Different ways of thinking about things, different takes on things, and in that sense, you could look at it as a big positive. That's how we try to take it. Is like it's positive. There's a lot of different churches because there's a lot of different types of people, but it's also can be very negative when it comes to pointing fingers at, well, you interpret Scripture like this and you're wrong. That's heresy, and we don't do that. We have some hard lines around if you get outside of main doctrinal things, Jesus being real. First off, like that's a
Big
problem.
deal.
Like Christ being about Jesus Christ, not like some sort of progressive idea of what Christ is. Not really a person, but more of an ideal atonement. That Jesus did die for sin. Things like that. People are kind of wandering away from those things. There's a whole lot of, statement of faith things that people wander away from. And so, nowadays you have non-denominational, right? Well, where did that come from? Well, it's not that old. It's not that old.
No.
As far as our background, my dad's pastor was he was a Baptist minister in the 70s. And for him, what happened is he he began to speak in tongues. He began to pray in tongues. And obviously in his circle, that was not okay. Because of that, he ends up getting kicked out of the church, but not only that, out of the parsonage with his family. And they are on the streets. Ends up starting a church. Same time my dad's getting saved. Ends up a couple years later, my dad shows up, and that's where we sunk in. At that point, it was a non-denominational church. They were not affiliated with any sort of structural, network or something like that. And so that was kind of a movement of a lot of people that was taking place. And so a lot of those guys ended up getting together, and all of a sudden you've got a network of churches. You could call it a denomination. The thing that's different is a denomination has a set of rules or beliefs or doctrines, or
you're going to operate by these sets of rules, standards.
Yeah. It's a structure, and I believe in structure. Actually, I believe in structure. That's not the part for me that I'm like, oh, that's a problem with it. I think there's a lot of good things. Nowadays we have networks of churches. And the accountability is not based upon money or buildings that are owned by someone else. The accountability is it's more relational, and it is legal. Non-denominational churches, you'll have a pastor who has overseers or presbyters or different names for them, but they can come in and legally, if the pastor starts teaching something outside of the bylaws that are signed in with the board and whatnot, then they can come in and remove the pastor or whatever. Or if there's an allegation against the pastor, they can come in and sort of take over. And so the pastor is at the mercy of those overseers. So some people would say, oh, it's just independent, nobody's over them. Well, maybe. That's why it's good to check on the church government of any church you're part of.
Absolutely.
What happens if this guy gets weird? What's the safety net? Who can come in and but also, it can get too political on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
And then the pastor has no leadership ability really because of somebody else is signing his check, right? So like the board sets, this board over here, this committee sets his salary. So if the committee, people who've been there for 30 years don't really all of a sudden like him, they can reduce his pay to $1 a year. And essentially they've made it unlivable for him. And so, it's politics.
Yeah.
Some non-denominational churches are not non-denominational. They're really a denomination that just took a denominational name out of their name.
Yeah.
And but they still are affiliated with. So it comes across because a lot of people are looking for non-denom churches because they grew up in a denom. And they don't want that. Other people that grew up by the way, it's so funny. People that grew up non-denominational are wanting denominational churches a lot of times because it feels more safe.
Yeah.
And then other people who grew up in that culture or a bad one and of denominationalism, and they feel like it's actually too structured. They're running to non-denominational churches. I think most people that whatever they grew up with, they want something else. We had Dr. Jim on a few months ago, and he's actually written a book about denominations. The way that he kind of talks about it is denominations are really just people's attempts to how they approach God. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's got a different attempt or a different approach of how they see God and all that. You can have a negative view of denominations or a positive view of denominations.
I think that's the big thing. Going into it looking for the pros, because it's super easy to see what's wrong with everything.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's good things to denominations. So I think the temptation is for a lot of people to just rip every denomination.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's why this one's wrong. That's why it's like, no, man. There's pros.
Yeah.
It can be a beautiful thing.
Yes, of course, I believe that in a perfect world, there's no denomination. Yeah, a perfect world. It'd be great.
Yeah. Right.
But I think that's heaven. I think that's heaven.
Yeah.
And do I believe that any one denomination or any one non-denomination has it exactly right? No. I think that everybody is a little bit skewed or whatever, has a different angle on something, and I believe that Jesus had it perfect. He was the central center point of perfect balance of theological thought and understanding and doctrine and methodology and all of that. He was the perfect, point of that. And we're all a little bit varied from that.
Yep.
And
Well, what tends to happen sometimes in the denominations is you said, Christ is the center and the denomination is over here. And what happens is people start to see this as the center and you start pushing Jesus out in denominations that are super like fundamental, like we are the only way. That tends to happen a lot in unhealthy cultures. Like, no, everybody else is wrong if you're not part of our club. And so what happens is you have this thing where you're pulling away from Jesus, but you're making people think that they're still looking at Jesus when they're looking at you. And it's like, that's really unhealthy. And that ends up burning a lot of people. And I think that's one thing I appreciate about what we do is trying to point people to Jesus and not our thing. And what we do is like, no, we're going to get things wrong. But generally, if we're trying to be as close as we can here, that's a good spot to be rather than trying to separate it and point people to your own thing. It becomes very like country club feeling.
Well, that's
that point.
interesting because most denominations were started or initiated because of a correction from something like, hey, the government, hey, we're going to protest the authority. I don't think the Pope is the supreme authority. I think the Bible. So denomination's birth or a line of Christianity, and then it's about government. So presbytery, so that thing's you've got denomination that says, man, we're missing something in this school of thought about baptism. Okay, it's everybody's saying infant baptism, so we're going to create something because I don't think that's what it's saying. It's actually baptism is the believer's baptism, not infant baptism. So you've got all of these denominations that are birthed or initiated out of corrections, and if we're not careful, when we make a massive correction, that becomes the point of focus, the point of emphasis that can get to what you're saying right there is we're centered on this thing instead of Christ. So
some people who were raised in a denomination, for some, certain denominations feel safe. So if say I move into an area and I was raised Baptist and I see a Baptist church, I might not, even as a person, I might not like everything about, the Baptist denomination or the church or, whatever. But because I know, generally speaking, it's a safe place, meaning I know that they're not going to drift too far this way on this doctrine. I'm familiar with the way that it operates. Even though I might even have issue with some things, I'm still going to be a part of that denomination because it feels safe.
It's a safe place for me to connect to God, raise my family in.
Right. And so if you have a general good experience growing up in a Baptist church, then and I could plug that in for Methodist or anything else. But if I have a bad experience in a Pentecostal church, well, guess what? As I get older, I'm like, dude, I ain't going back to a Pentecostal church. Like, give me something that's safer than that. And so then for some people, it's non-denom. They feel like non-denom is a safer place to be, that's more open. But there's dangers in that because you can have some people that say they're non-denom, and what they really mean is they hold to no statement of faith, really. Nowadays, what we are seeing is the birth of new, what I would they go into the guise, some of them the guise of like networks, but it's like, it's just another word for denomination. Not all of them, because some of them it's literally just a network. It's like business networks. It's people that get together. They really don't have any
affiliation,
legal connection. It's just other than just an interest or a goal together. But then there are networks that it's like there's one I'm thinking of right now that I was looking into a few years ago. And whenever I was like, dude, I just want to go to one of their conferences and just kind of check them out, To be at the conference, you had to be a part of the network, and to be a part of the network, you had to sign a doctrinal statement that you agreed. I was like, this is the denomination. Why? And there was a lot of the statement of faith stuff, of course, I agreed with, but also there was this whole section. I was like, I don't know about that one. First off, I can't say yay or nay to that, man. I don't even. How are you guys? Oh, you guys think you got it figured out? Yeah, gotcha. And you think you got it figured out to such a degree that you're going to make pastors say yay or nay, and then you're going to exclude them if they don't. You had to check every single box, and I couldn't with a clear conscience. And so I was like, well, you guys are too structured for me. Yeah, you guys are too smart for me. How about that? It was like, sorry.
That's the humble way to say it.
You guys got it right. I'm not smart enough to really have that answered yet.
I'm not cool enough for this club.
Yeah, and I am not going to be part of that.
Yeah.
And there's other people who think that would be foolish to not be, but it's also, I don't know, man. It's a completely different philosophy and approach to leading in the kingdom of God. And now, do I believe that they're not saved or not doing something in the kingdom of God? Absolutely not. I believe that they're incredible people and they're making a difference for the kingdom of God. And I have no problem.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, you're not ripping it.
No.
It's like, no, there can be really beautiful things about that. This is just not for me.
Yeah.
I'm
I would have
over here.
expected the word denomination
Yeah.
instead of network.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, you're just using that word, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I'm a part of another network and other networks where it's like, it's open. You know, it's not like this veil of, you know, do you believe in all these? I was at I'm a part of a pastoral network, and we were at a retreat a few months ago, and we're sitting there, and man, we were talking about all of it. I mean, we're talking about, you know, biblical interpretation. We're talking about end times. We're talking about creationism. We're talking about, you know, pneumatology. You know,
So
how
just
the
another
Spirit-
Tuesday for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we were deep, and you know, it was funny. One guy we were talking to, all he had been raised in was dispensationalism. That's all he had ever heard of was rapture and all of, you know, just dispensational thought. And so then it was like, you know, well, what about this? And I was like, you know, dispensationalism didn't exist till the 1800s, right? Like the rapture, the whole idea that everybody thinks about. And he was like, I mean, he's getting his doctorate right now in ministry. Like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's
in deep.
Oh, and he's sitting there and he's like, what are you guys talking about? And he had been ranting and raving, like in a good sense, ranting and raving and riffing on like some stuff that I'd never heard of. I was like, bro, that's really interesting. I never heard that. And then all of a sudden we bring that up and he's like, wait, what? And I was very surprised. I was like, dude, you don't, he's like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I really, eschatology, like that's not, out of everything that I've studied and really gone deep in, and even in the college courses I've taken and stuff, like that's one thing I have. So I've just taken what I was growing up with and just believed that. And so, dude, we started throwing out all these different variations of, amillennial and millennial and ism, and then getting into like what's just the different ways of interpreting even like Revelation and different things. And so anyway, so we're in a network, but here's the deal. It wasn't the prerequisite to be a part of that retreat or that network is you got to have this certain eschatological view or this certain, view on the gifts or this view. Now, everybody there believes Jesus.
Yeah.
Everybody, like the big pillars, the essentials, it's like, if you don't believe that, you're no longer a Christian. Like, honestly, it's not Christianity, it's Buddhism or something at that point, right? Yeah. So we all agree on those main things, big time. But all of these other things, like creationism, end times, and
So that network created a lot of room to navigate conversation. It wasn't hard line. This is what we're gonna do. How we're
and
gonna
I
do
can't exist in an environment that's hard line because honestly, my brain is I analyze and I can see value in different approaches to things. And so for me, for somebody to be hard line, like this is the only way out of all of the billions of people in history, I am a part of the very select few who have it all together. I think that's like one of the most ignorant things you can possibly think. And it's sometimes that's rooted in fear because it's actually a whole lot more safe feeling to feel like you've got it figured out, or you're a part of a crew that knows that they got it figured out, and so you can sell your soul to that. And it's easy. It's easy to polarize yourself. It's easy to be a Republican or a Democrat. It's easy to just be on the right or the left. It's easy to be. It's easy to be in a camp. There's belonging. There's a whole. It's tribalism.
Sense of safety.
And and so we all do it in some degree. And I think that you do have to find a tribe. You have to find people. Well, that's what we're saying. We are all people who believe. Like, I believe what I believe, but I'm also never going to believe most things past 90% because I know that there's a 10% chance at least that it's like some things I'm 50-50 on. 50-50 on things that can be 50-50.
Yeah.
When is Jesus coming back?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter if you think you know or you don't.
Yep.
Like that actually doesn't matter. That does not change the gospel.
Nope.
So why split friendships and churches over something that Jesus said we can't know?
Yeah.
I just will never understand that.
So you're going to experience a lot of that at our church on Sunday mornings too. Not just in conversation with you or in a podcast conversation. You're going to experience a lot of that type of language even on Sunday mornings, to where we've been in message prep meetings where it's like it could be this or that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our style as a church as well, being okay with what we're not 100% sure on as well. So I think that's something beautiful that's taken place even in this conversation. I'm thinking about the actual the question that came out about talk about denomination. You got a raw conversation that's obviously informed, but at the same time, it's saying how we feel, which is something that I've always appreciated about our podcast as a whole. Is we'll tell you when we don't know, we'll laugh, but at the same time, I like being able to walk away from conversations saying that makes sense when it doesn't completely make sense. You know what I mean? Good episode.
We did
Good
it.
content.
Look at us.
That might have been a finale.
Capital F.
Yeah. Like it wasn't bad. I mean, that's like a
was
250
actually-
batting average. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're not
man.
going to get kicked out of the majors.
Yeah.
We might get 150 people watch
You
this
might
one.
get traded.
If anybody's looking for somebody to be part of their podcast,
You got 4 options right here.